Hi there and welcome to Planet Zoo. So the past week I've been working on something a little different. The zebras, or should I say zebras, depending where you are in the world, they're my favourite animal in the game. They have such a great personality about them. They run, they play, they have all these little quirks that the other animals in the game don't tend to show. They're also a little chunky and a little more stylised than real life zebras would be. So I decided to have a little bit of fun with this, and I've turned this massive habitat into a huge zebra playset. Welcome to Zebraville. So how I made this, I started by shaping the landscape. I am really guilty of leaving my habitats a little bit flat, so I made an effort with this one to give the land a little bit of shape. This is really easy to do with the new terrain stamp we have. You basically set down the stamp of the level you want the land to be, then you can fill the rest with the flatten terrain tool. I wanted to have a river running through the middle, and I originally was thinking of having a waterfall at the back with a rainbow behind it. Then I remembered, when I was a kid in the 80s, I had this awesome My Little Pony castle thing, and as you'd expect, that was bright pink with an electric blue roof, and I thought it might be fun to recreate something like that in the game, a little playset habitat for my zebras. I mean, it did sound a bit absurd. Even when I was thinking of it, I'm like, this is a bit silly. But then again, that's the whole point of the game. You can pretty much recreate whatever you want with the pieces. So I thought, why not just give it a go, see what it looks like. So the path here goes all the way around the habitat. I stepped it up a little at the back here where the castle sits. So there is a section back there that takes you through some of the castle too. Let's take a look at this live. So yeah, this is the Zebra Village playset. I've got this custom fence that goes all the way around the habitat. I did have a little trouble up at the back here where the zebras kept escaping, so I moved the null barrier out a little and they've been fine with it since. I started this with this little bridge. Unfortunately the zebras won't use this, but the staff do when they're here to clean up the poop or refilling the feeders. This river then winds its way up to the castle. I did manage to squeeze in a little waterfall here with this bridge across for the staff to use. I'm not the best at building waterfalls. I really need to improve what I'm doing with that, so this is something that I will work on in other builds. The castle itself is made entirely of art shapes, aside from the clay painted roofing up here, which I was able to get that in the nice electric blue colour, so I decided to leave that in. Using entirely art shapes, it looks pretty fake, but that's what it's meant to do. It's meant to look fake, it's meant to look a bit plasticky. I did the original build in a painted brick, but it looked absolutely hideous, so I scrapped that and started again exclusively with the art shapes. Now, where the path steps up to meet the castle, I've surrounded this with a castle wall, and this leads into the walkthrough area. I've decorated that with some stereotypical playset pieces, like in a zebra theme. It's got benches from the Indian set, and I've made these colourful zebra portraits for the wall. The rainbow at the back here, that again is purely in art shapes. Back here is a pretty generic staff area with all the essential buildings. Staff enter the habitat through this passageway I've set up inside the castle. That takes you around the back and actually into the exhibit itself. So each of these village houses, they're a mixture of art shapes, thatch and wood. I used art shapes because I like the vibrant pop out colour that they do. I also wanted the walls to be a bit wonky, mimicking that sort of cartoon style. So you'll notice here, the walls are never straight. They're all at a bit of an angle just to mimic that sort of cartoony look. I've got a few varieties of these buildings. I think I made 3 in total. I could have done with a few more varieties, but after a week of spending time on this habitat, I felt like there had to be a cut-off point and to just call it done. Each of these houses is available on the Steam Workshop, and the castle for that matter is also on the workshop as well. I'll leave a link to my workshop page in the description below where you can find all of these. So other details I have in here, I've added this zebra sort of jump exercise yard. The zebras don't use this. They will jump over stuff in game, but they'll only do it if there's no other way to get around. So pretty unpredictable. I've also got this little fountain here, but I'm not too happy with this, so I won't linger on it too much. It's good, since you can't change the colour of the fountain pieces, it looks a little out of place compared to everything else. This is something to note about this build actually. since I've made everything in bright colours, I was restricted on what pieces I could use to actually make that, because only a fraction of the pieces in game have the colourable option. I've also not used any planting that wouldn't be in a zebra enclosure in the first place, so we've been restricted on, I think it's grassland for the African biome, which doesn't come with a lot of variety, so I've kind of stuck with the planting that I could use. What I've got here is a themed feeder gazebo. The zebras will walk up onto this, but for some reason the zookeepers aren't filling up the station. Whether that's because it's sitting on a bunch of other pieces, or it's just because there's enough food around with the enrichment items in the habitat, I can't be sure. But I'm quite happy with this little piece. The final piece I've got here is the zebra barn. I absolutely love this piece the most. I think it represents exactly what I was going for here. It's just an oversized toy barn. On the inside, I've got this little hay loft, and it's got some spare hay up here. Then down below is the bedding area for the zebras, which they're all completely happy to use, and it really looks adorable. The final touches for this, I've got these barn doors and windows, and of course the little loft window with its window box. Around the side here, I've also made this little storage area, and then there's the apple cart around the side, which I assume zebras would happily munch on apples. The barn is a little large in scale. In hindsight, I could have made it slightly smaller, but it sits relatively well in size in comparison to everything else in the habitat, so I'm okay with it. So in all, I'm happy with this little build. It was fun to do and something a little bit different to the norm. It took rather longer than I expected to get this finished though, but isn't that always the case? I'm also thinking of releasing a couple of the speed builds of the barn and the houses as separate speed build videos. I've never released a speed build without commentary, and I've always cut it down, which means I'm cutting out a lot of the material that I'm producing. What I need to do is a test to see if this sort of content has any interest. Anyway, I'll be back next week with one of these sort of builds again in my traditional park, so hope you check that one out. Anyway, thanks for watching, bye for now.